It's time for another Pinnacle Roundtable Talk all about TI-11. And who cares what the topic is for today? Because I'm sitting here with a ton of analysts who assured me that extreme gaming was the horse to choose in this LCQ race. What in the heck happened, people? Adam, you weren't here. You're off the hook.
I wasn't. Thank you.
Noxville, what happened?
I mean, like we said, it would be a lot closer than we expected. Extreme came in and they didn't look bad. They looked quite good in the group, so I think everyone was pretty happy with their performance. They got paired against Secret. It was a close series. In the end, ultimately, Secret went on to win the whole shenangle, so Secret were very strong. They were a team that we said could show up, have a lot of experience, individually, but not as a lot as a team. But Secret came together, knocked them down. I still wasn't too scared. Extreme went on, they beat Infamous, they beat Navi, and then they lost to Liquid, who went on and came second. So in my book, if you lose to the team that comes first and second, even though they didn't come third, they might have been the third best team with a really unfortunate bracket run. And yeah, the performance of the teams was great. Secret and Liquid looked outstanding, really.
Kips, I'm looking at this Liquid Extreme game matchup, okay? Liquid won the first game in 19 minutes, 43 seconds. The second game in 26 minutes. That's fast. Extreme got... I won't say the word that came to mind. That's mean. We don't have to go deep analysis on this, but did they just make an error against Liquid? Did they not read their opponent right?
No, like maybe they underestimated how fast Liquid could go exactly, but Extreme had already shown the cracks in their lineups. Like they had already lost these games where Lou didn't get to farm. And that is really, I think, their weakness throughout this entire qualifier is that they needed to get farm on Lou. And the two teams that ultimately won, and I think we're going to see this trend continue into the group stage and the rest of the tournament later, were able to spread farm on all three cores, play triple medium core if that was necessary, and simply out-tempo by juggling which two cores were playing tempo at which time. And Extreme had nothing against that, and later on VP also had nothing against that, because if you're looking for a big man to carry you in the end, he's never going to get there because you're up for his three heroes that will just be in your face all the time.
So what was the biggest surprise for you looking at all these? We gave Noxville his explanation here, but who surprised you guys, right? Like, doesn't have to be Liquid or Secret. Doesn't have to be Extreme. Could be hero picks. Could be Marcy's absolute dominance, right? Like, Skim, what's the surprise? It's not Marcy, I know.
So Marcy was not a surprise because I called it. And Ben was like, nah, she's going to get banned all the time. Nobody's going to pick her. I mean, in all fairness, in all fairness, she was banned a lot of the time, but people still prioritized her and people still let her go through. So that wasn't exactly a surprise. I guess for me, the biggest surprise would have been Virtus Pro crumbling so fast. I did think that they probably had a good sort of like crumbling kind of day in them, but it just felt like after their first win against Team Liquid, ever since then, they sort of just like faded away and just disappeared into the nighttime and were replaced by their alter egos, which were all very, very bad at Dota, at least on that particular day. And I guess I was a little bit surprised by how mature Liquid played. I don't think we necessarily highlighted them that much in the last episode, or the last time we talked about this, about the qualifiers, but I think they looked really, really mature in comparison to what they've shown in the EU qualifier. I did think that they had the potential to go far, but I wasn't 100% convinced they could make it. But seeing them versus Vici versus Extreme, I mean, the last match versus Virtus Pro kind of doesn't really count because Virtus Pro just lost to themselves, really. But those two matches in particular, I thought that Liquid looked like a really mature team that I think once it comes to the actual group stage of the final tournament of TI, you're not going to see them as the team that came in through last chance qualifier, but like an actual contender like the other teams have. And I mean, obviously everybody's a contender, right? But usually when you look at these teams that come through the wild card or the last chance qualifier in this case, you look at them as are they really going to be able to sort of like prove themselves? They're going to struggle trying to fight into the top sort of like 16, 12 kind of position. But the way Liquid's matured, and I expect them to mature even further because they have like another week of boot camping with these other teams now, I think they're going to be a real contender. So that's my big surprise for the LCQ.
Yeah. Is Liquid strong enough now that they can last pick Gyro and make it work in whatever lineup they have?
Who's that for? I don't want. No one wants to take the bet.
As for me, I think OG couldn't make Gyro work.
Okay. No Gyro. So
It's a
Adam,
hard hero.
we
Plus
didn't
5
get.
hero.
Okay. Plus 5. Adam, we didn't get any of your thoughts about the LCQ. And, give us the breakdown, Team Secret, Team Liquid, LCQ thoughts before we dive into groups.
I think Secret throughout they did a good job of like figuring themselves out. Like I think they kind of committed more to Rezo, like playing a more scaling core, and Crystal playing like a more of a enabling his team kind of hero, which he probably was good at because he played with Amar, right, in Creep Wave. So I think it's just the way the team worked out well. They also started picking Nyx a lot. Good hero. I think Liquid was the biggest surprise for me. I think they grew a lot during LCQ. I didn't expect them to beat VP or Extreme. I think the biggest difference was I think Extreme like stayed the same the whole LCQ. Like they didn't improve, they didn't get worse. I think VP got worse as the tournament went on. And I think Liquid, they kind of figured it out. And I think on their last day, like their last 3 series, they had second pick for every game. So they played 7 games of second pick in a row. And I think it does like build into your comfort and like what you're used to. So yeah, I think that's why Liquid came out on top in the end.
Now, I didn't keep...
Sorry.
No,
I was
you
gonna
go
say
for it.
that. I was just gonna say that Vici is also a big surprise. I think for everyone coming into this, most people thought they would be not at the bottom, but definitely like one of the bottom couple of teams. And they just kind of fell apart. They when Polaris fell apart, Vici just accelerated and did better. They did beat out a bunch of the teams that you would expect in Nouns and Wildcard, but I mean, before that they also looked great in groups. They beat T1, and they took a game off Liquid. I don't think you could have expected, and a game off VP. So I think that their performance, while they didn't make it, was actually quite unexpected. I thought they would be quite bad, and they were pretty good. They got further than Extreme, which I would never have predicted that.
No. I mean, I just really quickly want to shout out Wildcard here. Like, holding up NA's honor, getting to that second round, giving it their all. I'm actually very proud of them. I greatly enjoyed their run.
For those on this call, hotly contested topic. Does the LCQ count as TI?
I don't think the teams and the players would actually look at it as being TI,
I
right?
wouldn't.
And I think that's the biggest factor coming in here, really. Regardless of what you think of the event, I don't think any of the players feel like they have now been at TI. And you could see it when Liquid qualified, like Mickey tweeting out a TI player. I think the teams themselves look at it as sure. Effectively, they're in the same hotel, they're like whatever, like the setup might be the same, and it's probably 100% going to be the same for TI. Everything could be the same, but to them it just doesn't feel like a TI, and I don't think the prestige, I mean, obviously the prestige is there to get to TI, but it's just not the same.
I think as a player, you kind of feel the difference in the standard of teams you're playing. Like, I take Secret and Liquid, for example. They probably get to scrim like OG, Tundra, and they come here and the teams that they're playing are very different. And some teams in this LCQ this year, they don't really have like a real identity. So it's hard to figure out what's good and what's not. And I think they ended up coming on top because they figured out what works for themselves, which they kind of developed their own identity on the way. So I think it's also, I think as a player, you might feel more pressure in the LCQ than TI itself. Because I think getting to TI is always the hardest part for like teams that have not been doing well the whole year.
Well now...
sorry, Lee. The big question is, remember that the LCQ has been a compromise because there was no first major. So they wanted to make it as like a catch-up apology for the regions that couldn't make it to the first major. And in the past, we had at the start like just 2 teams playing in like the playoff, the wild card, and that ramped up to 4. And if you recall back to Tier 5, CDEC started in the wild card, and that's kind of where the story began. But in some sense, we don't need to view the last chance qualifier as that, because we have the DPC season, which is like the origin story. When, like if a team goes on to do well, we're not going to say, oh, well, where their journey started was in the regional qualifiers and then in the wild cards. It's like we're going to be looking back at the DPC. So I kind of am annoyed that it doesn't count, and the wild cards did, which were always 2 or 4 teams. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think it makes a big difference other than what the players think. So, yeah, I'm with Adam on this one. But I will say it is a bit frustrating to have this like perception changing over time. Like Valve could easily make the last chance qualifiers count more by just saying this is part of TI. But the narrative in the story has been there are only 20 teams at TI, and the last chance qualifier determines 2 of those.
So now that we made it through the LCQ and we're officially at TI then, we have our TI teams. And I think it was a good point to make that Liquid and Secret won't really feel like they came out of an LCQ. And when slot allocation is being argued, which has been heated in the past, right? EU and China have always gotten a ton of slots. But we just had 2 EU teams make it in through the LCQ in the biggest inter-regional qualifier that we've ever had. So is Europe terrifying at TI, or are the regions do they all still have a chance, right? Kips, like what's our regional strength look like for TI?
I mean, it's really all about if you want like a deep pool or a pool that peaks high, right? Because I still think that the top 2 teams that China is going to face or field are absolutely terrifying. Of course, Aster might not show up, in which case there's just the big boys to beat, but there will always be the guys to beat. And as for Europe, we have a ton of qualifying teams this year, but especially if you look at, say, the Gaming Gladiators and the Tundra Esports, it's been a while since they actually earned this ticket, and they haven't looked as hot since. So certainly the field is wider, and certainly Europe now has performed the best over the year, both with these teams at the start of the season and then with the last chance qualifier teams now. But does that mean that we're actually going to peak higher, or do we just have more cannon fodder? I don't know yet.
Coming out of the LCQ for Secret and Liquid, they're obviously on a momentum high. They get the extra games to figure things out. Is that an advantage, or is the extra tape on them going to lead into the group stages and they struggle because the teams know more about them?
I'd say it's an advantage. I definitely think that momentum is a thing, and we're going to see a couple of teams just get off to a cold start and maybe lose a couple of games at the start of a group stage that they really shouldn't. And maybe in the end, for like a Liquid or a Secret, they'll pay for it later in the tournament, where they have definitely now, where teams have also had time to adapt, as opposed to just having seen them play in that LCQ. But I think for now that it's an advantage, definitely.
Yeah, see, I wonder because Adam was like, oh yeah, they keep picking Nyx. Nyx, good hero. So is Nyx going to get banned? What else do they have in the tank, right? Like that's a question that I have. But Skim, we're going to give you Reddit's favorite question, okay? Give us the group of death. Who's your group of death? Start a fight with the rest of the Dota scene.
I have to preface this by saying there's never a right answer here, because I remember pretty much, I feel like at every TI, there's always been like, oh, there's a group of death, and the other group turned out to be significantly stronger or better for some reason, and they turn out to have like the better teams at some point. So I don't think there's ever a right answer to this, but I am very much in favor of Group B. I'm looking at Aster here, Fnatic, Beast Coast, Secret, and Spirit, which I think all have a good chance of sort of like making like a top 6 run at least. Every one of these teams in their own right. I mean, again, I can probably say the same about the other one, but if I had to pick one, I'm probably going to go with B, mostly because I expect some of the top teams that we have in Group A to somewhat fall off, and I think that if we, I mean, again, this is just a very speculative, but yeah, I'm going to go with Group B, but at the same time, it's so difficult. I'm just going to stick with Group B. I'm going to stick with Group B.
Skim, put some respect on Entity's name here. Come on.
Oh, I didn't even highlight them. Oh yeah, of course, Entity, my boys. No, I'm very partial about Entity as well. I think they've what was it? Was it Stockholm? Was it? I can't remember which game or Malaysia. What was it? Alec? I don't know.
ESL, possibly.
Yeah, I think it was ESL. Yeah, but I really enjoyed watching them. So yeah. I think it's a really strong group. I mean, even TSM and Tundra. Even though I don't necessarily rate TSM that highly, I think they have this kind of like playstyle approach to Dota where it's just going to be really nasty. It can be really nasty to play against them, and they can just pull out some weird shit that you're just not expecting. And then, I mean, I think there's back in Complexity, they used to have a term for moon meander. So I don't even remember. It essentially boiled down to just moon meander just clowning about and just making some random stuff happening. And I feel like that sort of like spirits carries on to this day. So
Yeah, some ice vibes.
Basically.
Okay, Adam, is Skim right, or are you picking the other group?
I think Group B has higher competition. Like there are more high tier teams. At least that's what I think. To be fair, like I haven't seen a lot of these teams play. Like Gaming Gladiators, like they haven't played a tournament in quite a while. TSM, Tundra. TSM played Genting, I guess. Tundra hasn't played in a while, but I think for Group B, I think like all the teams can take games off each other. Where I think Group A, there'll be a bit more like separation between the top and the bottom.
So who's the top of Group A?
LGD, Boom, RNG.
OG.
OG? I don't know about OG. I feel like OG always has like slow start to every tournament they play. Like, I think the scariest thing about OG is that they learn super fast. But like every LAN I watch them play that they win, like when they're like playing the top 12 and top 8 games, like the games are close as hell.
Yeah.
And when they reach the final, they're like, nah, this is easy, guys. So
No,
yeah,
I'm not saying they're gonna go through like easy, but like that last spot in the upper bracket, that's OGs. Like
possibly. I have a hot take. I think OG is like 50% chance they won't like make it to place very highly.
and
Like
the
if they get a bad
50%,
bracket,
the other
50% they win.
is them winning. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
that's win, yeah.
I'm with you on this one.
Okay, Kips, what's your reason? OG's not going to top the group, but they get a good bracket roll. They win the tournament.
Yeah. And like I think one of the things that could get in their way here is that what OG likes to have is they like to have this underdog narrative. And their playstyle sort of facilitates this. Like they're tenacious, they are more courageous or more stubborn than other teams sometimes. And if they win the group too hard, like it's going to be hard for themselves to believe that they are not the favorites here. And you can see this at all the OG runs back. It's like it's always Seb hyping people up with like, nobody believes in us, everybody hates us, but we're going to show them. It's like that every single time. If they don't get to do that, or if they get like, an elimination match versus an unexpected opponent that they just can't like, they're halfway through the hero's journey, they haven't leveled up to max yet, and suddenly the final boss already arrives. Yeah, I can see them getting knocked out just because tenacity alone is not enough at that point. But if it's a stairway, they're gonna walk all the way to that ages.
Okay, Noxville, Kips is given the mentality side of things here. Adam's got they just learn too fast. There's nothing you can do against it.
Yeah.
So here's my question. If Group A is easier and the teams don't have to work as hard, will OG learn enough? Will any of those teams learn enough? Or will all of Group A suffer because the development will happen in Group B?
I mean, yeah, that is a concern. if you look back at the past, people have always said one of the most important like roll of the dice that you get with TI is if you're in the group with the team that is defining the meta, you're at a huge advantage. Something that PPD always said is that he always loved being in the harder group because it made later in the tournament being easier. And I mean, I guess going back to what was said earlier is like the group of death is always like looked back on. It's always the thing that you say. People think which group is harder, and it's like always a murky topic. And then at the end, like Skim said, people are always wrong. But it's like there's always like a shifting change in what's meant by that. So I think agree with the analysis here. Group A has a higher like peak, and Group B has more competition for those middle slots. But the one thing to remember about this tournament is that there's a big gap between the group. Well, there are gaps. The tournament is stretched out between groups and playoffs and finals. And this means that these teams, on top of that, by the way, the teams have been there for a while now. They've been scrimming, they've been practicing. They also have access to some of the last chance qualifier teams that didn't make it as scrim partners on site. So I think that there's way more tools available for these teams to adapt quickly behind the scenes. And as a result, I think Group B is going to be like almost a disaster in terms of like how close it could be for top, making it into the upper bracket or lower brackets. And yeah, like it's kind of a like perfect storm. All the conditions are right for Group B being like a bloodbath, and every single game mattering so much. So yeah, I mean, in that regard, Group B is going to be a disaster, and I can't wait for it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we got the top of Group A. We'll dive into Group B predictions. We'll stay on the softball. Group A. We got the top from Adam, right? So what did you say? Wait, did you say boom or bet boom? Because
Boom.
we got too many booms in Group
just
A.
Boom. SEA boom. OGLGD boom.
Got it. No one's saying liquid to top Group A. I'd just like to point that out. Reddit has accepted that EG is not making it. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that one. Skim, who's going out of Group A?
I definitely think Hokori is going to have the hardest time in that group. As much as I love me some SA Dota, I do think that even in their qualifier run, I wasn't 100% convinced from what I've seen from them. And going into this, I fully expect them to have the hardest challenge coming into all of this. If they prove me wrong, yeah, kudos to them, and I would hope so for them anyway. But I do think they're sort of like a prime target for this bottom two slot. And unfortunately, also my boys over at the Quincy crew, or I guess Sonics now, even as much as I like them and as much as I think they have a lot of like experiences to like back them up as well, I do think that they are also not necessarily at the top of their own game, and I see them struggling in this group. But man, maybe I'm going to be proven wrong, but I do think that they're going to have the toughest time. And if I had to choose two teams, it'd probably be those two.
The one thing to say there, Skim, is that one of the reasons that people are kind of thinking Sonics are going to do bad is because they really haven't done much in terms of other tournaments. So they didn't make it to any of the majors except the ESL one, and they did badly there. They didn't get invited to some of the invitationals. I remember they were really upset at the time when TSM got like invited and they didn't, and it was before TSM did well. Like the invitation came out before the events in which TSM did really well, and they did really badly. But we haven't really seen very much, so it's one of those situations where we expect them to be bad, but only because we haven't seen them for so long. And yeah, maybe they could shock us, I guess. Surprise.
Yeah, for sure, and but that's all the more reason to think that we've only seen so little of them, and that was already not very convincing either. That I think it's just going to be much more difficult for them to sort of like prove us wrong here, because we have so much more info in a lot of these other teams. I guess I will throw in a third name also, just because I do think it's worth mentioning. But I think Gaming Gladiator is also going to have a little bit of troubles in this group, mostly because I think they also just lack experience. I think in these types of like long drawn out sort of like games, and especially in the tournament. Like even if they do make it into the playoffs, like Ben said, there's so much more time now. There's less room for momentum to sort of like carry you forward, and it's going to sort of like elevate these teams that have experience dealing not only with high pressure situations but also that have like a build rapport with coaches, have like year-long experience of like adapting to these environments. And this is why I think some of these teams that sort of, you know, making not necessarily their debut but haven't really been in these big events, big TIs, I think that's where those teams could potentially struggle. So I do think, yeah, if I had to pick a third team to potentially not make it, that'd be them.
Adam, behind the scenes, who you scrim with matters a lot, especially for these teams who haven't had a chance to play. I don't know enough about these relationships between pros and coaches and everything, but are there teams that are at a disadvantage because they don't have the like professional networking to scrim with the right teams? Or at TI, is it pretty even who's playing who?
I think generally Group A scrims Group B. Like Group A teams wouldn't want to scrim Group A teams, I think, unless they both feel like they are really good. Like I could see that happening. Does it matter? I feel like most teams, most managers do a good job of like getting contacts, and you get into the scrim groups and you kind of just find scrims with anyone. And it's also a fact that other than these teams at TI, no one's really playing Dota right now. Like most other teams that didn't make it are sad to say they don't exist anymore. So you kind of don't really have a choice of who you get to play, unless teams start to like reject you or think you're bad scrims. Yeah, I think on top of that, pubs right now aren't in a very good place. I think most players are just losing. Like there's no role that's winning MMR. I think according to stats or something else, just losing. Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, there's just gonna be, you probably get like 3 or 4 scrim partners. You come out and then you play your groups and you see what the meta goes, where you're the one that was right or wrong.
Just throwing that in there, do you think there's a non-TI team in SCA at the moment that's worth sort of like scrimming against?
Worth scrimming? Probably not, no.
Okay.
Ouch.
No.
I wonder if the last chance teams are scrimming anyone, or have they already gone home?
I mean, the
They're
teams
all
that are
sent home, I
scrimming
think.
in SCA are like the country teams that are playing the Predator League in Japan or something. I think that's like just casual country teams, you know. I don't
Maybe
think TI teams
Polaris?
would wanna play that. I think the teams are like all on break right now. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a team like Polaris might be a good scrim partner for some of the teams, I guess. Maybe T1 as well.
Yeah, but they're not going to.
Yeah.
Like, they just immediately fell apart.
The scrim groups kind of did. No one's
Yeah.
really like looking for anything. So
And it's actually an interesting thing as well that I just realized about the division in the schedule. The fact that there's a big gap between like the playoffs and the finals, or like in the playoffs itself.
I don't like it.
I don't either. And like, who exactly are you going to scrim once you're in there? Are you going to scrim? Are just all these teams not going to have anybody to play, or at least nobody who cares? That's actually a very weird situation to imagine yourself in.
It mirrors the DPC though, right? I mean, teams got an entire week to prepare for one match.
Filled with scrims.
Yeah.
I think in DPC it's kind of different because teams still have a game to play. If like you're top 3 at TI, top 3, top 4, like you can only scrim the other team, the other top 4 team, you know. Like there are teams that have lost, they're definitely not gonna play, man. Like who's gonna scrim you?
Yeah, they're in the infinity pool.
I just want to say that if you guaranteed top 3 at TI, you can afford to pay teams to scrim you. You guaranteed a bunch of money. Why not just pay them $1,000 a game, $2,000 a game? Like, you've got the money. You can. I definitely think that is something that teams should consider. And I just want to say, I think it is bad in terms of like you lose the flow and the hype of TI. It makes it harder for a team like Spirits to carry on that momentum. You know, like as they did last year. I'm just not picking on them. I'm just saying they were definitely a team that was able to carry that momentum. Maybe another example might be DC at TI6. They were able to go the whole way. And yeah, it is better in some ways for fans who are tuning in remotely. means that there's more coverage on weekends. But it's also worse for fans live on site. So just wanted to
In
say
the
that.
hotels in Singapore are also fucking expensive, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. But I will say that in general, I think there are some perks to the change in the formats, and maybe we do see different shifts happening at different times in this event.
From a pure production point of view, like there is a huge advantage to having like a whole week effectively, or maybe even if it's just a couple of days, to create content specifically for the narrative around these 4 teams. Other esports have done this and are doing this. Like Valorant, their Masters event or their World Championship that was just a couple of weeks ago, they also had a weekend for just the top 4 teams, and they were able to produce content dedicated around these players and making sure that you have like a really built narrative around each player and like these teams. And even there's still room for improvement. So there's technically a lot of ways to sort of like at least make it a really, really unique product. So there's an upside to that for sure. But I agree with you that, you know, the flow kind of like it takes out from my perspective, it takes out a lot of percentages of an underdog story sort of like happening. As you mentioned, the DCs, the Team Spirits, I mean, even OG and technically also CDEC back in 2005, these stories are so unlikely to happen once you give a team 7 days to figure them out, right?
Yeah.
And especially these top teams who all have like, you know, they have coaches, analysts, they're going to figure out your shit. And we were talking about underdog stories, most likely going to be teams that aren't as experienced with having coaches, analysts, and working these things out under these sort of like pressure situations. So I feel like if you're coming in, it's your first TI, you're kind of just excited to be here, and then you have like a super, super dope run in the group stage and even in the first phase of the playoffs. And then, Team Secret's now going to have 7 days with their 2 coaches to figure out. Have fun.
Hey! I want to say, what about Liquid with their 5 coaches? No, shout out to Jabs and Blitz. But I just wanted to say, I mean, is that a bad thing? TI is the most important event in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Since TI 3, the favorites has never gone in and actually won the event. It's always been some upstarts. And one of the reasons is that things happen so fast. Things happen too quickly. And the quote-unquote, like, I mean, an example of this might be Secret. During COVID and that period of time, they were dominating. They were playing, because of their position, they were playing NA, they were playing EU, and they were playing Western Europe. They had like the best run ever in the history of the game. They had like in 100 games, they won like 88 of them or something like that. Like they were destroying everyone, and if they didn't lose a game against Unique, they would have set records that will never be broken. But like, you know, they go to TI and they get destroyed. So in terms of being able to reward consistency, I think it's like not necessarily a bad thing that the way in which the impact of individual games and ability to learn from individual games is reduced. And sure, fans are going to hate me for saying this, but I don't always want an underdog to win. I sometimes want the teams that have been doing well consistently over the whole year to have like a platform to do that at TI. I don't want this to be, let's all get this done in 10 days and everyone goes home and we'll call it a world championship. Like, more time means that people have more evolution. And CDEC is a prime example of this. At TI, none of the analysts really picked up on this none of the analysts at TI, except some poor South African scant who was like, why does CDEC keep on playing on Dire? No one else realized this. Everyone else was like, that's actually kind of interesting. And then EG were able to like learn, and they were able to adapt and think about that. But it's, you know, it takes time to be able to do this type of analysis. And yeah, it does favor the top teams. But when you start getting into this type of tournament, you start needing to rely on your support staff in many ways to be able to succeed. And that's a good thing, I think.
So,
Sorry. I just want to quickly interject, and I'm already prefacing this by saying that I don't want to derail this conversation, but I agree with you, Ben, in a lot of ways. But I will say though that this would only be fair if then also the entire structure of the ecosystem supported the idea of everybody having this sort of like same level of playing field, right? As Secret, is going to have much more financial stability and sort of like power to build a team and a support staff that empowers their player to be the best that they can be. If 5 people just randomly show up, and I mean, no offense to anybody that's like whose first TI this is, and I'm not sure what their financial situations are, but ultimately they're always going to have a worse situation to sort of like get into this sort of like stage of the game, stage of the tournament. And they're not going to have the same playing field as Secret, who then can exert this power, or I guess quote unquote power, over these newcomers essentially. And that's, I think, I agree with you though, that I do think that people or teams like Secret, or any team really, should be rewarded for consistently being good. And I look forward to that, of course. But unfortunately, the ecosystem doesn't really allow this sort of like equal playing field. But
that's fair.
Just
that's
a side
fair
note.
Just to respond super quickly. I just want to say, I agree with you completely, and I think that the money should be spread out more so that, like, if you do well, you get more money. There's more progressive distribution of money, and I'm sure Kips will agree with me on this as well.
Yeah, a lot of the financing of teams is based on the hope of the win, and if you take the hope of the win away, you take the hope of a lot of the finances of the underdogs away. And that's just how it is right now. And you're going to have to replace that with something, or, you're pushing the bottom out from under your pyramid, which I think that's lost a couple of blocks already recently. So risky.
Yeah, there are American sports analogies to be made here, but guess what? I'm not going to do it because literally no one cares. So, Group B, let's talk about that a little bit because compendium predictions are due, everyone, okay? We can talk about who's going to win the tournament for hours, but let's help out the general people, which Noxville definitely has like 12 different articles about this. But aside from that, Adam, you gave me Group A winners, so I don't want you to give me Group B winners. Kips, Group B winners. Who's topping it?
Group B winners. Let me make sure that I'm topping the group. We're going to see Entity. We're going to see Aster. We're going to see Spirit. And I'm going to be very cheeky here. I'm going to say Thunder Awaken.
Whoa.
I can see that.
I
would agree with that.
Yeah.
Adam, what do you see in Thunder Awaken? What's giving you the top 4 vibes from them?
I saw him play against Genting. They looked like a really solid team. Like their core players are super good. Like Pakas really impressed me as a player. And I guess not to take anything away from Tundra, but I haven't seen them play in quite a while. But I've seen 3-3 and 9 play pubs, and I think they're on a kind of a higher level right now. I wouldn't ignore this team at all.
Okay, fair enough. What's the juicy head-to-head matchup in Group B though? All right, who's got some history that has to fight it out in the games? I feel like we have more of those in Group A.
Yeah, I feel like these teams have no interactions with each other whatsoever. I guess you get the Fnatic TSM stand-in friendship kind of thing. I don't know. I don't really see much.
I mean,
is there any beef here?
Entity versus Spirit?
Is it?
Pure is still not very popular with the Ukrainians.
Yeah. Oh, political. Interesting.
That is a good observation.
I think there's a little bit of spice. Entity, Tundra, Secrets, all EU teams, all have very different stories coming into this group. Entity are the recently strong team. Many people, including some of the panelists here, put them towards the top, let's say top 5. Tundra were the gods of, the whole reason that the whole last chance qualifier was some silver-haired Fox economist complaining that Nigma didn't make it into TI last year, and Tundra was the team. Actually, it was the fact that Tundra didn't make it in and Nigma didn't make it in. But since that moment, since TI ended last year, Tundra were the gods for 6 months. They were destroying. They were. When I say the gods, I don't actually mean they won everything, but they were always top 2, top 3, winning this, win this. They won ESL, won LA or whatever it was. They won a bunch of those online leagues. They came in, they were looking hot, and as soon as they qualified, they kind of dropped off. And there's a similar story to tell there. You can get to that later about TSM. Maybe Tundra versus TSM is the bunch of the people who fell off the map. But as soon as they qualified for TI, they just started chilling. They were just chill. They didn't worry. Like, Moon Meander, every time I put a tweet out, like, TSM's chance to qualify goes up, he was like, he was liking that. He was like, how close are we? How many points? How many points? He was loving it. And as soon as they qualified, they took their foot off the gas. They didn't care about the 2 or 3 regionals. And I think Tundra are the same story. So I'm interested, maybe not, it's not a big rivalry, but Entity Tundra Secrets provides a very good metric for assessing, how the region has developed over time. And I'm very interested to see that.
I think Tundra, sorry.
Oh no, go for it.
I think Tundra and Entity have been teams that the way they draft and approach the game, they've always been very unique, and they have like their own set of ideas. And I think like the fact that both these teams are in Group B are like a big advantage to Group B teams, because I think these two teams are generally they kind of set the meta with their strategies in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that several big teams just blatantly copied Tundra's drafts and strategies for the first half of the year. Like, they told me. It's not just I saw it. I'm like, no, people told me. Like they were that dominant, and their ideas were considered that strong. So, maybe it's just hubris that I put Thunder there, because I'm like, whatever, we haven't seen anything of Tundra, and Tundra has just been biding their time, snakes in the grass.
I do think Tundra's ceiling is very, very high on paper, because if you look at what they sort of like have and sort of like their, when I look at teams, I try to look like, all right, what's their Dota minds and who's actually like the really skilled like mechanical players that sort of like like carry in a clutch moment kind of thing. And if you look at the Dota minds, you have first of all Aoi, who's I think probably one of the biggest Dota nerds to ever exist, really. Snaking, 3-3, Saksa, all 4 of them, I guess, are really great Dota minds. And then I think Skeeta and Nine, they've been sort of like tearing it up in Europe for years now. In pubs, they've constantly been 2 of the, if not the 2 highest ranked MMR players on leaderboards. And there's been numerous times where I actually thought they were going to finally break into sort of like the top tier, and then they still sort of like fell short. And actually speaking, I think this is probably the best tournament for them yet, where they couldn't really shine and sort of like establish themselves at the top. I guess I probably would have said that they already established themselves at the top had they not fallen off, like you guys pointed out. But I do think their ceiling is really, really high, and for me, it's sort of like they're either really good or they're really bad kind of team. I don't really see them like middling it out and just sort of like, oh yeah, we're just top 8 or whatever. I think they're going to go really high, or they're going to fall really low.
I have one more I'd like to propose, which is Secret versus Beast Coast.
Mm-hmm.
They played.
Hey, hold on. Noxville is picking Secret versus South America. If you are a TI5 Secret fan, then that matchup, it doesn't matter who from South America, the moment you pose that, there's like a knife twisting in my chest at the memory of that. So thank you, Noxville. Now you may continue after we have that little flashback.
I just wanted to say, I think, looking back to last year's TI in the group stage, Beast Coast 2-0'd Secret. And if not for that, Secret would have won the group. Doesn't make a huge difference in terms, they would have played T1 and then VP. But it might have changed, not the outcome necessarily, but it might have changed some of the dynamics of the TI, and like the confidence of a team going into playoff when they won their group is really huge. So yeah, Beast Coast had a moderately disappointing. They came just one. They were 5th position, so the top of the lower brackets. If not for that, it could have changed the outcome for both of those teams in a drastic way. Beast Coast ended up losing to Alliance, but ultimately, I think it's always interesting to see Secret versus South America. It's always interesting to see sort of these revenge stories where a team has beaten you at TI before and you're able to play them again. So yeah, Secrets versus Beast Coast. Let's go.
Noxville's got another stat, okay, and I'm quoting him on this, right? We're not ripping off his stats without quoting him.
Oh
The
wait,
best.
no one's ever said that in a DPC broadcast. No one's ever instructed the casters not to credit me. It definitely happened in China.
The best win rate hero from the LCQ was Pudge with 12 games. So, hey Adam.
Hey.
You play lots of pubs. You're talking about watching all these players play in pubs. Who's got the secret OP Pudge, right? Like, who's going to stomp through the groups with some random Pudge pick that's actually going to do anything? Or is this like a pure random stat that Noxville's dragged up that's not useful?
I feel like the late pick Pudges are super unkillable, and the hero does too much damage and heals too much. I don't know, there's something wrong with the hero fundamentally, for sure. He shouldn't be able to like get that far into the draft against certain lineups. I also think the LCQ drafts are not really meta defining. I think the drafts and hero picks we see in group stages will be very, very different from what we've seen in LCQ.
Okay, so no Pudge.
There will definitely be Pudge, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I did put that as my prediction as the highest win rates hero, but looking back, it's like the losses for Pudge were Mickey, who got 2, but Matu, so Mickey went 1 and 2, and Matu went 4 and 0 with it. So now I'm afraid, because Liquid has moved forward, now I'm afraid about it because if they keep on trying to flex it between the two of them, then, you know, Matu's going to pick up his game, is what I'm saying. And Anna also lost one of the games with it, so he's not in the contention anymore to own with it. Or be.
Okay, so who's going home in Group B then? Pudge isn't defining anything. Team Liquid's in Group A. All right, it's not relevant here. Who's going home in Group B?
Fnatic.
Fnatic,
Yeah.
TSM. Actually, I don't know about TSM. I feel like it's probably those two teams.
I mean, can you imagine
Maybe
if it's Fnatic Talon?
I don't think. I think it's not high chance that it would be both those teams, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
I'd say it's Fnatic, TSM, Secret, Talon in order. I'm basing Fnatic on their BTS performance. They might have got way better after the scrims.
Yeah, but if we do that, we also have to say that Hokori going out first is maybe not as likely.
I guess so, but I think Fnatic is like, at least what I think of them is they are 5 very, very talented players, and they're just like ideas of the game. And these scrims that they get with TI teams might like change that dynamic a lot.
True.
Fnatic also has experience under TI pressure. Hokori, Theolacor has probably been at TI, but have the rest of them? I'm not. I need a Moxie to answer that question.
I think I looked this up and it was only him. Or at least it was only him in terms of a lot of experience.
It was only him.
Yeah.
But you look at you look at Fnatic, and that is not the case, right? They've got all kinds of TI experience, and that makes a difference too, right? Like people choke, or they don't know how to handle certain things, or they don't maximize their scrim potential, right? Like we're talking about the support staff Secret's gonna have. The players themselves as well have to make the right choices.
Yeah. I did a power rankings article for Pinnacle, available on the website at the moment if you want to read it. Tier D I had was Sonics and Hokori, and C was Gladiators, and then that was from the other group. And then the only other team C, the category Tier C, category C, was Fnatic and Talon. So we kind of discussed those. But then if you have to look a little bit, further to consider who might be competing with them. And one team we didn't mention a lot was another group, BetBoom. We don't really know too much about them. We haven't seen a huge amount of information from them. And I want to say that if you look at the odds on Pinnacle, I looked earlier, they were 51.0 for BetBoom, which basically put them as the second lowest odds to make the finals as an outright. So it was like Hikori and then Betboom. And then the other two teams, which are both in Category B, were Beast Coast and Thunder Awaken, which I also, those also at the bottom. And barring the teams I've just mentioned, the only other team I have from Tier B or C or D we haven't mentioned is EG. And I think that there's a bit of fan copium happening there, but somehow Pinnacle has them at 21.24, which implied odds is about 3% chance to win, to win TR. So, yeah, I mean, depends on how you want to look at this, but definitely agree Fnatic Talon. But the question has to be: is Beast Coast and Thunder Awaken worth discussing at this level, or are you going to slide Secret in? That's why I'm confused right now. Is really how does Secret come into this?
It's very hard for me to picture Thunder Awaken being eliminated. I think they're a pretty good team. Beast Coast as well. I think Secret is. I think it's easy to view Secret as like a good team now because they just won LCQ. But I think there's still like I said, quite a difference between the LCQ and the TI group stage. So we'll see what happens in the next week. Yeah.
Like I like them, but they're quite flawed over on Secret.
I think they did have I think they did have like a improvement, right? When the Rezo playing like more scaling cores, I think that was a big fix to their team, so they might be a lot better now.
Yeah, and they're gonna have the mood. Whereas with and I did actually want to bring up Beast Ghost, so I'm happy that it like matches with the stats. Like Beast Ghost sometimes just bombs. Like sometimes Beast Ghost just has a tournament where they might as well just have sent all their brothers, and it's like and it hurts when it happens. But here again, like you got to talk about it. You got to talk about people that could bomb out. Like if Beast Ghost shows up, it's fine. If the brothers show up, then yeah, sorry, it's not happening.
It should also be noted with Beast Coast that they're like, I think they're the team with that's been together the longest with this exact lineup. I think they've been together like 3 years, 4 years or something.
Yeah.
2019, October 4th, 2019.
It's really impressive that they stuck together for this long, but I also think that at least in Dota history, I'm not saying that it's impossible for a team to stick together forever, essentially, but in Dota history, at least, it's been sort of like shown that every team has sort of like an expiration date, unfortunately. And I'm not saying that their expiration date has hit already, but it does lead to less consistent performance and more, and it makes it more difficult to sort of like peak again. And I mean, Adam, I mean, you could probably speak to this, but at some point, teams just fall apart once they stuck around for too long because when things aren't happening, ideas start clashing, all these things start happening.
I think like some teams play better on certain patches. I think like namely like maybe Alliance back in the day. Like there's a patch where they were just the god team, like Secret as well. They won straight for like 8 months, and then patch and boom. Sometimes people just aren't good at other things as they are some things, like K1 I think is a good example. He was like the only guy playing Bloodseeker, Wraith King, but he was just spanking every game, and now heroes are kind of dead. So, and they did play around him, right? The team, like it was a play around K1 carry me team, and maybe it's just the wrong time.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Like they're still fully all in on K1. And if you look at, well, like the style that has been up and coming with, as I said before, like the triple medium core kind of drafts where every single player needs to be able to, if it's their game, they need to be the one that pops off. Like there's not really space for that in Beast Coast. Like I'm sure the players have the quality to do that, but that's not what they spent the past 3 years refining.
Yeah, sometimes it's just looking to find yourself as a team again. I will say I'm a big Whisper fan though.
Same.
Boy's a beast.
So we're going to wrap up this episode very shortly. I'm going to give all of our wonderful guests a chance to think about their answer for the final question while I draw a parallel to what Skim says. So the final question is going to be your clear winner for TI, right? Pick your favorite and then pick your dark horse. So take a moment, think about that if you don't have one already. And the parallel I'm going to draw for what Skim said about teams that have been staying together for so long is what we know in Dota is that ideas win, right? All of these players are incredibly talented. At this point, most of them have a ton of experience. There's usually at least one veteran on every team. Whoever has the idea of how Dota is supposed to be played and has it the fastest and adapts the fastest wins. So teams that stay together for a long time sometimes lose that ability to have idea transfers that you get from bringing on a new player or two. And so it's not always just mentality or players start fighting with each other. It's not always that the patch changes and none of them can play the new heroes. Sometimes it's that things change and they don't have the ideas to understand how it changes. Now, I've given you my monologue. Noxville, he who has done the most analysis on this, you have to have the easiest answer here, okay? You're running the numbers and all the simulations. Give it to us.
I mean, I can tell you the first part of your question, I already had the answer. I was like, okay. The second part is not safe. Okay, so the winner, come on, I don't care what Jawed's said about his scrim records. I'm going to go with LGD to win. But I don't even know who you can call a dark horse. I looked down this list of names, and I got to look very far down until I find a name who I like. Ooh, I don't think anyone would consider them winning. So it's like it's really, really hard. Like, and then it reaches the point, obviously, where the team you got so low that the teams can't win. Like, there's no world in which I can imagine them winning. Like, so if I'm looking at about the point where, I put Spirit to win last year was 3.5%. I'm gonna go with another team at 3.5% who I think are criminally underrated. I'm just gonna say Tundra. I'm gonna just steal that one, and now no one else can say Tundra, and I'm gonna watch as you're all floundering.
But
Adam,
Tundra's
you are
not a
allowed
dark
to say
horse,
Tundra.
Ben. Oh, really?
Pardon?
Oh, thank you. Nothing.
No.
My
All
next.
right. Yeah. You
Dark
jumped
horse
in.
Tundra.
Okay.
Winner entity.
Oh. Any reason? You're just gonna leave it there, and then in a month he's gonna be like, "Look at how smart I am. Look at that."
I'll explain it in a month. I think entity is just a really good team. I respect these teams that like play a very strategic Dota. I think a lot of the other teams don't have this aspect. I think Entity has been really good about it. They've definitely impressed me. Tundra, I feel like they're just a good team with good ideas, even though we haven't seen them in a while. Like I said, I watched them play some pubs, and I feel like they're in a good place. You know, you can tell when you play against these players that they're in a good place. When their team is doing well, you know, they just play better. Like I think Collapse is like super high win rate in pubs now too, you know, so I expect Team Spirit to do well. I think it's just a reflection of how you view the game as a team. Yeah.
Okay. Skim, you'll be up. We'll let Kips go last.
I think my first pick as winner is probably going to be Aster. Mostly because I think, I don't know, I've just been very convinced by them throughout this entire season.
That's how they get you.
Well, that actually is how they get you. And my dark horse is going to be Boom. I'm not sure if it counts as a dark horse, really.
They do.
Kind of,
Yeah.
I think they do. But
more of a dark wolf.
Oh.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it is because I kind of want them to win. Also, I mean, imagine an SEA team winning in the SEA TI. That would be fantastic. But at the same time, I also think they have a lot of potential to still sort of like grow even throughout this event. And I mean, I hope that Coach Mushi can sort of like enable them to do just that. But yeah, it's gonna be difficult either way. But yeah, those are my picks.
Can I cut in and just say the one thing which I think is, I mean, great pick, Skim, as always. Team Asta, this might sound ridiculous, but Team Asta, in terms of the odds, Team Asta is like 7th most likely to win TI according to Pinnacle. Which, if you're looking for a cheeky way to make some money, I think that they are underrated. So let me just soapbox for a second. It goes, according to Pinnacle, LGD Spirits, OG Entity. Okay, we're all happy with that, right? Then it goes RNG Secrets, then Asta. So you can't bet. It's not possible to bet against Secrets. But I think that the value exposed on betting for Asta is a little bit interesting there. Having them below RNG and Secrets seems almost criminal. So those are the odds I looked at earlier. They might have changed by now. Maybe by the time the video's out, the traders are like, we made a mistake. But as it stands, I think I like Asta, especially because they're underrated by people.
This is a separate podcast episode, but for the people watching, this is a great thing to go on a comment section warrior thread on. China hasn't impressed anyone in a long time at TI.
Wow.
And I'd like to it's a whole separate podcast, but we got a lot of people going all in on China, both in LCQ and in this tournament. And boy, have they not given us a reason to do that for a long time. It'd be nice to see.
YouTube comments, you know what to do. At Reinessa.
I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying let's just think about what's happened over the past several years. But Kips, give us your clear winner and your dark horse.
You muted.
We can never know what they are. She's keeping it a secret.
Oh no, it ain't working, Kips. Oh, it
Oh no.
But it's a lie.
Let's guess what she's saying.
Yeah.
Alright, we're gonna
Talk
read
slowly, and we'll just.
The gesture.
draw.
Or you can
We
type
bust out
it
the drawing.
into the chat.
Dark horse.
Team Spirit.
That's a spirit. That's Team Spirits.
Oh, spirit. All right. Yeah.
Okay. Team Spirit as the dark horse or the winner?
Right, 1 point for us.
Winner.
Ben.
Winner.
Okay.
Winner.
Winner.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, it was either Spirit or Wolf team.
And
Now the
Dark
dark
horse.
horse.
Now it's a horse.
Liquid?
Oh, Team
dark
Liquid.
horse, okay.
Oh yeah.
So the water horse is the dark horse.
Got it. So it's like ocean water instead of like Caribbean water.
You know this is gonna be a gift, right, Kips? Like,
Yeah.
Gonna be the preview to the podcast.
I feel like we've reached such a productive point here. If you have no idea who you've been listening to this podcast to for the last hour, the beautiful voice of Kips that she can clearly demonstrate right now. Analyst, caster, coach, stats, all those things. Noxville, remember to credit him on your broadcasts, people. Thank you. But he does make funny faces at you when you don't. So you know what? Like, your choice. Ask him, he who knows all of the things, all the practical things about esports from doing all the things. And our special guest, you may notice that that's not Ponlo doing weird like squats on his chair like the last time.
I saw that. God damn it, Pongo.
So thank you, everyone. We'll end this with God damn it, Ponlo.
God damn it, Pablo.